Okay, so for this drawing, you're just going to need a normal pencil, maybe an eraser, but we are going to use what's called the quadrant method. You want to write that down so you can remember. So quadrant method is basically where we split up our reference image into 4 quadrants. We'll split it up down the center, across, down the center, across. Same with our box that we're going to draw into. And then we're going to, after we sketch out the eye, we're going to draw out some of these shapes that the different values of shadows are making. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw a line going straight through the center, across, and up and down. So what I told everyone in class to do was find the very, very center of the pupil of the eye and make a little dot right in the center of the pupil of the eye. So that big circle right there, right in the center. And that should give you, if we draw a line going down straight through the center of the eye, that should give you kind of the halfway point between, or the halfway point of this rectangle that your reference image is in. And then if we go from this pupil center of the eye and we draw a line that goes out towards the left and right, horizontal line across, you will also get a line that goes right through the center. I'm going to, just for the sake of the video, I'm going to outline mine with thin Sharpie, so maybe you can see it a little bit clearer. But you do not have to do this unless you want to. So you can see it clearer, you can use a Sharpie, a colored pencil, whatever works for you. But if you want to keep it in pencil, that's fine too. So once you have the grid drawn on this one, or the quadrant, then you can do the same thing on the area where we will be sketching out your eye. So if you can't really tell where the center is because we don't have a little dot to start with, you can just continue the line from here. Just make sure it's at the same height, continue that line over with your pencil. And then to find the center, so that we can draw the line going vertically, right cutting through the center, take a look at your top 2 corner areas. If you just find somewhere right in the middle, whatever you think the distance is, kind of right centered in the middle, I'd say maybe about right here. As long as you're close, you'll be okay. You don't have to measure, but then you can draw a line going right down the center just like that. So now this is kind of similar to the grid method that we've used in the past. Now we've got 4 boxes or quadrants that you can start to use to help you get the size and shape of the eyeball and just the main features. So we're going to start with a very light, very basic sketch. So the first thing we want to do is we want to identify how big the eye is. So if I look at just now the inside of the eyeball, kind of that shape that we're seeing right here, we're going to give ourselves some points to kind of identify and mark on here. So the first point that we're going to mark out is going to be the top part of the eyelid, or I guess the top eyelid, where it crosses through this line. I'm going to do a little mark right here. It's hard to see on the video, but hopefully you can see it a little bit. Right over there, that's the top of the top eyelid. And looking at the top of the eyelid right here, if we look at the distance from the intersection where the cross is, and the top of the eyelid, and then the top of the box that our reference image is in, the top of the eyelid looks like it's a little bit less than halfway. I'd say about this is probably the halfway point between here and here, and the top of the eyelid is about a little bit less than that. So what we can do is we can go over to here, we can look at this section of the line that we've already drawn. We're going to bring our pencil about halfway between the intersection and the top of the box, and then let's just bring it down just a little bit so it's slightly lower than that. Now we've got our mark. We know where the eyelid is going to start. So let's go down to the bottom. Let's do the same thing and do a mark. I'll do it with Sharpie this time. Again, we want to see where the bottom eyelid falls. I think it's kind of the same, if I'm being honest. It looks like from the intersection to here, the bottom of the box, the bottom eyelid falls right about here. I'd say the halfway point between here and here is probably about right here. So it's going to be a little bit above halfway. So if we go over to here, we've got halfway point, about right there. We're going to go up just a little bit, make that mark. So I've got top, bottom, and then now we're going to do the two sides. So looking at our eye, we're going to mark a point over here for this section right here and where this is going to fall. So the two corners of the eye, the outside corner and the inside corner. Looking at the outside corner, we can see that it's not going to be right on the line. It's actually just a little bit below, at least on my reference image. Take a look at your reference image, and if yours dot right here or the corner of the eye looks like it's closer to the line or further than the line, then trust your lines that you drew, because I may have drawn my lines differently than you. You might have put yours slightly higher or lower, which is totally fine. But mine is slightly lower, and it looks like it's kind of right in the middle, maybe a little bit over towards the left. So looking at this line, I'm going to find the middle, kind of go to the left a little bit, come down, and make a little dot right there. That's going to be the outside corner of my eye. Let's go around to the inside corner. Here's kind of that little part. It's a little difficult to see, but right there. So this side actually looks like it gets a little closer to the edge of the box, and it's a little bit further down from the line. So I'm going to go a little bit further down, a little bit closer to the edge of the box. I'm going to make a mark about right there. Now, something that you guys want to check before we start to draw this eye shape in is we want to look at the distance of all of these dots to the edge of this box right now. So I'm looking at the distance from here to here and from here to here. Now, does that look like it's the same distance? You don't need a ruler. You can use your fingers like this, or you can just look at it with your eyes. Same thing over here. I'm looking at the distance from the corner of the eye to the edge of the box, corner of the eye to the edge of the box. I can maybe move this in just a little bit. Might have gone a little too far with that, but just barely. Same thing down here, looking at the distance from the bottom to here. Use my fingers to kind of give a rough measurement. That looks good. And over here, looking at the distance from the dot to the edge of the paper. Again, I can use my fingers to give a rough estimate, but that looks good. So once you feel like you've got those dots where you want them, now you can start to sketch out the shape of the eye. Shape of the eye is super important. We're trying to get this as accurately as possible. So it's just connecting the dots, but how do we connect the dots? We have to decide, is it a straight line, a curved line, a wavy line? So that's what we're going to start with first. So from here to here, dot 1 to dot 2, we've got kind of just a general curved line. So I'm going to bring this up, do a nice curve. The left side's almost going to look kind of like a football. Right side is going to get a little bit different. Same thing from here to here. We have a very similar curve, except it just looks like this curve upside down. So we're going to bring this down. Nice curve. Make sure you're sketching lightly. And now here's where the curves start to differ on this side. If you really look at the eye and the curve that it's making, it comes up like this, and then it kind of straightens out, and then it curves around this way like that. I'm going to outline it with a Sharpie so you can see it a little bit better. But we're going to try to copy or duplicate that same kind of line. So we're going to bring it up like this. We're going to stop short of that mark that we just made, but we're bringing it up. Then we're going to kind of straighten it out just like it is there. It kind of dips down a little bit. And then when we hit that mark, we're going to start to curve it around and bring it back up like this. So you can see how it's very similar to the grid drawing method too. We're kind of drawing square by square for now. And then this last one, I'm going to go over it one more time. This curve kind of falls like this, just so you guys can see it a little bit better. It's not perfectly straight curve. It kind of curves down and then comes up, and it's a little bit more of a straight line than it is a curve. So it's going to come up at more of an angle, kind of something like this. As long as you're close, you'll be fine. If it's not the perfect shape, you'll be okay, but we're trying to get it as close as we can. So now we got the shape of the eye. Now what we need to do is we are going to get the shape of this crease that is above the eye, so the eyelid crease. So let's start the same way. We're going to start by figuring out where this line right here of the eyelid crease passes through that vertical line that we drew in the very beginning. So if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the distance from the top of the box down to where the eyelid is. I'm gonna try to find that same distance over here and go ahead and give myself a mark. Also making sure that I have enough distance between the eyelid crease and the top eyelid that we already drew. I feel like that looks good, about right there. And then if you feel comfortable, you can just start sketching out the shape of the eyelid, but I like to also figure out where's the beginning, where's the end of the eyelid crease. So let's see, on the left-hand side, I'm gonna try to put a little dot kind of over here for where I feel like that falls. It's a little bit above the line, kind of a little bit far from the line over here. If we look at what we've already drawn, it's up and to the left a little bit of the inner eye crease. So I'm going to go up and to the left a little bit, looking at, again, kind of the distance. I think it's going to be about right here where that ends. Then let's go to the other side. Same thing. Where does this mark kind of end? Might be a little bit hard to see on the video. Put a little dot right there. This one's kind of right above the corner of the eye. About right there. Again, I'm still looking at the distance from here to the edge of my paper, making sure that everything looks accurate. All right, now, again, we just connect the dots. So this is not going to be a perfect curve, like almost like a rainbow arch. It actually kind of curves, then flattens, then curves and angles down. So I'm going to try to copy that curve as best as I can. So it comes up. Sometimes it helps to kind of drag my finger along and follow along with my finger as I draw, so I can make sure that I'm drawing exactly what's on here. But if that's not helpful for you, then you don't need to do that. See how it's got a nice subtle curve, and then it flattens, kind of straightens out, keeps going straight, and then as we get to kind of this area, it's going to start to curve down and end there. All right, we got our eye, we got our eyelid. Now what we need for the last bit of our initial kind of sketch is the iris and the pupil. So the iris is the colored part of your eye. Pupil is the dark black circle inside the colored part of your eye. So when we're drawing this, we need to notice a few things. We can notice that the iris, the bigger circle, goes all the way up to the top eyelid and all the way down to the bottom eyelid. So we know that our circle is going to start and come around to the bottom and then continue and go back up to the top. The other thing that I'm looking at is this negative space, the white areas of the eyes. Look at this kind of funky, almost like crescent moon shape that's being created on this side. I want to try to duplicate that shape in here. So as I go to sketch the circular, kind of the left side of the eye, sketching it out, and I'm not only trying to make a circle in here, but I'm also trying to create this kind of crescent moon funky shape. Just like that. So you see how this shape and this shape are very similar? That's what we're looking for. Let's go to the other side, same thing. Now this isn't really crescent moon shape because we got this weird kind of part of the inner corner of the eye, but we can start to try to duplicate this kind of funky shape that we're seeing here. So again, I'm going to continue from here. I know that this needs to come down and touch the bottom. I'm going to bring this out and curve it. And then just seeing if I get kind of a similar shape. I think it looks like it does, but I can maybe adjust some things on here. I'm noticing that my curve maybe comes down a little too low. So I'm going to adjust that. Bring it up just a little bit. That's super subtle, but if you notice the same thing with yours, that as you start to draw this, things aren't really lining up the way that you're seeing them, then stop, erase, adjust, and then keep going. All right, pupil. Pupil is really, really big. It's not a little itty bitty pupil like this, so we're going to draw a nice big pupil. So looking at, what I'm really looking at is the distance from the outer edge of the pupil to the outside of the iris part. So it's pretty big. maybe something about like this. Not like that. I'm going to erase that inside part because we don't need that. But I'm looking at kind of the width of this outer ring and what that looks like. I think that's pretty accurate though. Okay, now that we've got everything sketched out as far as just the main parts of the eye, now what we need to do is we need to go in and we need to start drawing in the shapes of the shadows. Very similar to like how you would do a paint by number, but instead of breaking up the different colors, we're going to break up the different values of gray. So I'm going to draw on here with my Sharpie. You don't have to draw on your reference image, but sometimes it helps. But we're going to just identify what some of these different shadow shapes are that we're seeing. So right here, we have a really obvious one. That is our highlight that's in the eye. So whatever we kind of look at over here, we want to draw that over here. So highlight of the eye. And I'm still using my grid. I can see that it's going to go through, it's going to pass through that line. Highlight of the eye comes down kind of like this. All right, awesome. We've got the highlight of the eye. Might be hard to see in the video, but you can probably see it on your paper. There is like a light gray that kind of goes around the pupil of the eye. It's kind of a wiggly line. So let's go ahead and draw that in. Doesn't have to be perfect or exact. You'll still get kind of that effect of an eyeball, like where it has all those kind of cool lines and things going through it. But if you notice like some other areas of lighter gray, you can go ahead and draw those in. But so we've got that around there. So now we've got the values in the eye. Let's move our way outwards. So looking on this side of the eyeball, all of these, this whole shape, all the values in there look the same. We don't have to draw any shapes or anything. Over here on this side of the eye, I'm starting to see some different values come into play. So it's very subtle, but I see a little light area right there. A lot of this is just kind of a normal medium gray, but I see a little bit of a light gray right here. So I'm going to draw kind of a little shape like that. Then over here, I see a really light area. So I'm going to do a little circle right there. Little circle. Oops, that might have been too big. Right there. And I think that looks good. That's pretty much all the kind of value changes I'm seeing. If you see more, feel free to draw in more shapes. All right, let's start working a little bit outside of the eye. So looking at this, and we're thinking about how we're going to paint this. We're going to want to almost have a map or an idea of where to put different values down. So looking here, I can see that there's like this light strip. I'm ignoring the eyelashes. Don't draw those in because we don't really need those yet. But there's kind of like a light strip of gray right here. So I know that I'm going to draw that in knowing that I'm going to eventually paint that area with a lighter color of gray. There we go. There's kind of that light strip. And then I can probably go a little bit lower. I'm still looking at the distance of these things, these new shapes, to kind of how far they are to the edges of the box. I think that looks good. All right, now I'm seeing some other values come through. This one's kind of subtle, so if you miss it, that's okay. But there's a little bit of a lighter value over here, and there's kind of this section of a little bit of a darker value, just barely anything. But we're gonna draw it in just so that you guys have it. So even if you don't see it, go ahead and draw this in with me. Got kind of this shade. So we have like light gray, a little bit darker gray, light gray again. And this whole section right here is kind of that slightly darker gray. So let's go ahead and it looks like it comes from kind of the corner of the eye. Comes out, it gets real close to the edge, but doesn't touch it. And then it curves and comes down kind of like this. Again, I'm looking not at just the line that I'm drawing, but the shape that's being created in between the line and the edge of my box. So if this shape and this shape look pretty similar, I know I'm on a good track. All right, let's keep going. We have another kind of darker value that comes up right here. It's actually really dark. It kind of comes down like this, curves around, and comes out like that. So let's go ahead and draw that one in. It's going to curve around. It's going to meet at the inner corner of the eye, something like that. And again, if you're seeing different shapes than what I'm seeing, feel free to draw in what you do see. There's another one right here. Gonna do that, kind of curve it. Again, it gets close to the edge, but doesn't totally touch it. And bring that down. That looks good. All right, now let's start going on the top half. I think that's good for the bottom half. All right, top half. We have this kind of dark value that comes up like this. And then it looks like it just kind of slowly fades away and gets smaller and smaller. So I'm going to go in. Looks like it starts right here in the inner corner of the eye, comes up, almost touches the edge of the box, comes out, and it's going to start to slowly get closer and closer and closer to that eyelid. And then we only have a few more. We're not going to worry about drawing eyelashes right now, but the eyelashes create a darker looking value of gray. So we can actually draw that in. So from the outside corner of the eye, we're going to have a line that comes straight out. And then we're going to curve and we're going to follow the curvature of the eye. But as we follow it, we're going to get closer and closer and closer to that top eyelid that we drew, just like that. So it goes kind of from thick and then gets skinnier. And then the last few, we've got a real nice dark section right here that kind of fades out. Starts in this upper right-hand quadrant. Kind of gets closer and closer to where the inner eyelid ends. And then we've got one more right here. It's a little hard to see, but it is kind of like dark gray, medium gray, really, really light gray. So we want to separate all of those. So it's kind of just a wiggly line, but if you see a different shape, that's fine too. But that's pretty much it. So now we have this broken down into these shapes. We don't want to shade anything with our pencil. We don't want to leave it like this. So that when we go to use our paint, we can mix different colors of gray and we can start to lay down those values of gray where we see them.